What I'm talking about. Hey, everybody, welcome to the Psychic and the Doc. And it's so great to be connecting with all of you again. Mark Anthony is my partner in this crime today. And of course, we have Joanne DiMaggio going to be joining us here in a minute. So fasten your seatbelt for that. I'm telling you, I had to wear gold because she was showing up today. I want to just tell everybody out there, I am in the process of several kind of big things. And so I will be, I missed one show with you guys, but I'll be moving into my new place by May 1st. So once that's over, all things back to normal. Thank you for filling in for me, Mr. Mark. And I'll tell you, these are some incredible times, right, Mark? Are you excited about today?
Oh, I really am. Joanne DiMaggio is just an amazing guest. And, if I could talk about her just a little bit, she's the author of several books, including Edgar Cayce and the Unfulfilled Destiny of Thomas Jefferson, which we're going to be talking about. And Joanne has been affiliated with the Edgar Cayce Association for Research and Enlightenment since, I believe, 1987. And that organization is near and dear to my heart. I have been a speaker at several of their conferences at the ARE, Association for Research and Enlightenment in Virginia Beach. And Joanne has earned her master's degree in transpersonal studies through Atlantic University. She's a graduate of the Eastern Institute of Hypnotherapy, and she is an expert in past life research. In fact, Joanne founded Plexus, the Past Life Research, Education, and Therapy Organization. So we're going to talk about some pretty interesting things. Welcome to the Psychic and the Doc, Joanne DiMaggio.
Yeah, it's great to have you.
Thank you. I'm really thrilled to be here with you tonight.
You know, I often wondered, what side of the bed do you have to get up on? I'm just thinking, what side of the bed do you have to get up on to be Joanne DiMaggio? That's what I want to know. What side of the bed? So when I think about this, I'm thinking she is not getting up on any side of the bed. She's just levitating right through the ceiling like one of the X-Men people. And you know, it's. I want to start out by that because if you'd have said Edgar Cayce to me a bunch of years ago, I would have just looked at you like, oh, was he a relative of Edgar Allan Poe? You're talking about the same guy. But fast forward to where we are, and I love the title of this, you know, and I love this message, Edgar Cayce and the Unfulfilled Destiny of Thomas Jefferson Reborn. My personal opinion, there are a lot of people trying to fulfill the unfulfilled destiny of Thomas and Jefferson as we speak today. But as I think about this and I think about your life's journey, I often wonder, how in the world did you get tapped on the shoulder or banged on the head or got up off of the bed on all sides of it at one time to become you and for this to be your life's work?
Wow, Pat.
I mean, come on, we got to get into this. This is only an hour show, right, Mark?
Yeah, we jump right into the deep end of the pool on this show.
We'll get to know you when we play poker later.
I think that for me, as a child, I always was intrigued by the idea of reincarnation. I grew up Catholic. I'm an Italian Catholic girl from the south side of Chicago. So yeah, none of this stuff resonates to anybody in that in my old neighborhood, believe me. But I always thought that some of what I was learning in Catholic school just didn't feel right to me. And so I started, when I was a teenager, I started to read books by Jess Stern and Ruth Montgomery and about Edgar Cayce. And that made more sense to me. That seemed like that was a just universe in what I was reading. So I kind of, thought about it, went to sleep basically, got married, had a family, lived in suburbia. And then in 1987, along comes Shirley MacLaine with her Out on a Limb miniseries on ABC for 2 nights. And suddenly, a lot of sleeping metaphysicians woke up. I think it was the big wake-up call for many of us. And she talked about reincarnation in her series, and that reminded me of how much I was intrigued by it. So I started looking around to find, well, are there any like-minded groups that I could become part of and learn about? And that's when I discovered Edgar Cayce's ARE, and I joined in 1987 and have been a part of it ever since.
Wow.
Yeah.
You and Mark are like early starters. I'm like a late bloomer. Not talking about underwear right there. I mean, just later in life. Mark, you too, right? I mean, isn't it interesting to hear a story like that and just know that things are meant to be?
It is. My mother was very much involved with the Edgar Cayce Center, and that's how I was introduced to it. And she went to the ARE for the same reason a lot of people do, because she had some very serious health conditions that allopathic Western medicine wasn't able really to help with. And she found a lot of treatments in the medical database there. And Joanne, for people who may not be familiar with Edgar Cayce,
Right.
those of us in the metaphysical field are, but for our listeners who aren't, can you briefly explain why Edgar Cayce is so associated with medical treatments?
Well, actually, he's considered the father of holistic medicine. In his lifetime, he gave 14,000 readings. 12,000 of those were health readings. He had people contacting him from all over because they had exhausted going to traditional medical routes. And so they went to the man of miracles, and he went into trance, gave them a remedy. And the remedy proved successful. And I think he was just so far ahead of his time, because we're only now catching up to the work that he's done and the remedies that he's prescribed. So people are still using those remedies today. So, so those 12,000 readings, you can go from A to Z about any sort of chronic condition you might have, look it up and find a remedy that Cayce suggested that could very well work for you as well.
Yeah, I understand, like back in the 1920s and 30s when he was, at his peak. Actually, it was before that. I do know that he was asked to do a health reading for President Woodrow Wilson.
Yes.
Because Wilson was really, really ill. And, what people need to realize is, number one, that healing is a gift from God. Because people are always asking, well, why do you psychics are always talking about healing? It's a gift from God. You look at the Bible, Jesus was healing people, and this is, what's better than health? There's nothing better than health. Yeah, I mean, anyone that, especially this era that we're living in now, and Casey, through his channeling, his transmediumship, kept talking about the alkaline, alkalizing your body, and so that became something, a centerpiece of his work. And now we know that cancer cells cannot exist in an alkaline environment. So what, like 80 years after Casey was channeling this information, scientists are now proving the importance of the alkaline diet and how this keeps the body from falling to disease.
Mm-hmm. And one of the things I wanted to ask you, because there are a bunch of dots to connect here, and I love how beautifully, Joanne, you have time and time again connected dots. So this dot is what happens when the most renowned 20th century father of holistic medicine, Edgar Cayce, gives a life reading for T.J. Davis, a get this, because I read it wrong the first time, 2-day old nephew of his secretary, Gladys Davis, because now we've got the fundamental framework for how this book just takes us on a ride that you're thinking, I think we're all levitating right now, right? I mean, think of it, 2-day. Oh, I have to go back. Linda said, you got that wrong. It's 2-day. It's not 2-year, Pat. It's 2-day. I mean, how did that blow you away?
Well, that's actually, that's one of the first stories I heard when I joined ARE in 1987. I had a friend of mine who knew I was interested in both reincarnation and history. And she said, did you know Edgar Cayce did a life reading on a baby boy at 2 days old and said he was the reincarnation of Thomas Jefferson and Alexander the Great? And she gave me the reading number because, all of the people who received readings had numbers to keep their anonymity. His is 1208. So I went and I studied his reading and I was absolutely fascinated by it. So, I like to think of myself as a reporter for the universe. So I thought, this is a great story. I want to get this story. Well, I tried for years to get in touch with him and to talk to him, and got a lot of obstacles thrown in my way. And finally we met in 1996, and the rest, as they say, is history. But what I was really fascinated about in that reading was that Edgar Cayce said that this soul could do for the world what Jefferson did for this country. And I thought, imagine being 2 days old and having that put on your shoulders. I wanted to know what his life had been like with that sort of a prediction or prophecy. Was it a living hell, or was he working on fulfilling it? And of course he didn't fulfill it, and I wanted to know why. Nobody seemed to be asking that question. They were just blaming him for not doing it, but nobody wanted to dig and find out what happened that he did not fulfill that the destiny that Cayce saw for him.
And I got to tell you, the way you wrote this book, and I got to show it. I think Jacob may have some pictures of it, but I just want to just pop it up there for a minute. The way the book is written, it is as if I'm watching different segments of a movie. And I'm going and I'm like, oh, wait a minute. Wait, oh no, that's a picture. And everything is so documented. I'm thinking, whoa, this is like, and reference to Atlanteans, reference to Egypt. And am I like reading this story? And I have to tell you, it is intriguing. How the heck writing this story, and if there's anything in here you could think about, how was writing this? How did it change you? Because I don't know how somebody can write something like this and be so immersed in it without something going on the inside.
Yeah, it was a challenge. It was a Herculean effort, believe me. It took me 8 years. It came from a combination of things. It came from conversations I had with TJ, because he lives here in Charlottesville where I live. And it came from driving back and forth to Virginia Beach, going to the Edgar Cayce Foundation, to the archives. So I was going in the vault. and reading his file, his parents' file, Mr. Cayce, Gladys's file, and then creating a chronological storyline that was all based on historic documentation. I did not want anybody to come up to me after the book was done and say, you know, that isn't true. And then I could turn around and say, yes, it is, and I can prove it. So that was very important to me, that I be very careful in how I put this together. And then the second part of the book is TJ's own memories of what it was like growing up in the Cayce household. So, you know, I don't sugarcoat it in any way. I mean, one person told me they thought it was depressing. To be honest with you, I felt at times like I knew his parents. I knew Gladys. I knew Mr. Cayce. And there were things when his parents would make decisions that I knew what the outcome was going to be. I wanted to go back in time and just strangle them. Honestly, I was getting there were times I was really angry with them. And then it was frustrating at times also to work with TJ because, you know, he actually didn't know a lot of the things that were in that book because he never went through his file. So he never read all the correspondence that was going back and forth between Cayce and his parents and Gladys and other people that were in that circle. So there was a lot of stuff that was totally new to him. And it took him a while to sort of acclimate to it, especially about his mom. I mean, that was really painful for him. But he had given me permission to go in and do this. And I felt, honestly, Pat, I felt as though I had made him a promise when we were in the afterlife together.
Yep.
And I said to him, okay, I will do this story. And I felt like, even though I had so many obstacles thrown my way, so many people did not want me to write this book. Yeah. And I just, for some reason, Spirit had me persevere. And it was almost like I had Edgar Cayce on one side of me and Gladys on the other, and they're kind of holding me up and going, keep going, Joanne, keep going. And I would get upset. I'd put it away for months at a time. I thought, I'm not going to do this story.
Yeah.
All these people upset with me.
There's absolutely no way that you are not going to write this book, because guess what? There's no place you're going to be able to stop and then not continue. That's the deal. It's like listening to Mark do a reading, right? It's like, you know, you don't stop Mark and say, are you done yet? No, you don't do that, because there's something that takes over.
Yes,
and you can hear it in this. Mark, you were gonna say something.
Yeah, I'm really curious. I want to ask about your past life regression work. Now, as a hypnotherapist, I assume that means that people come to you and you hypnotize them and they are able to recall details from previous incarnations. Is that what your work is?
Right. That's primarily what my work is. It's doing past life regressions. I do several different types of regressions depending on what the person wants. So there's one that's specific for chronic conditions. If they want to see what their physical karma is, we can do that. I also have one that will take them to the afterlife so they can see how they actually plan this life out. And so, you know, they really can't blame anybody for it because they decided this is what they were going to deal with in this lifetime. And I just do the traditional regression, and sometimes we'll add soul writing at the end of the session. And I'm doing them all on Zoom now. So it's been, I've somehow now have a global audience, which has just been wonderful.
Yeah, you brought up an interesting point. You said about finding chronic conditions based on karma. And that's what Edgar Cayce also said in his teachings and in his work, that many times, or maybe always, people's health conditions in this life are connected to an issue in a previous life. Has that been your experience?
Oh, absolutely. I did a whole research study on that topic. It's in my book, Karma Can Be a Real Pain. I had 50 people.
Sorry, I love the name. That's a great title.
I had 50 people come in who had various chronic conditions, whether it was heart disease or arthritis or, you know, problems with their joints or whatever. And they would come in and I would take them to the past life in which that chronic condition first occurred. And then we would do some healing work. And about 30-something% of the people in that group had a spontaneous healing just by going to the source of what that chronic condition was. So I had a woman who had head to toe psoriasis she went back to a past life in which she was a call girl in the Old West. When I asked her, what are you thinking as your soul is leaving your body at that moment of death? She said, I don't want to be touched anymore. And so in this life, she manifests a skin condition in which nobody wants to touch her. That's how powerful our final thoughts are. So it was a fascinating project. I love research projects. They're like my favorite thing to do.
I have a question. I'm sorry,
ahead,
Dr. Patton. I noticed that, many people wanted to find out about these prior lives of T.J. Davis.
Yeah.
But he never agreed to a past life regression session, not with you and not with anyone else.
No.
Did he ever tell you why?
No, he never said why. He just wouldn't do it. And also, it should be said, he's never claimed to be any of those people. I asked him once, I said, do you think you're Thomas Jefferson because you remember being Thomas Jefferson? Or do you think you're Thomas Jefferson because Mr. Cayce said that you had been him? He goes, no, it's because Mr. Cayce said it.
Wow.
And yet, when you read the book, you'll see there are many, many occasions when things come up, memories are coming to the surface that he could not have possibly known unless it was a memory from that lifetime. Like the time that he was in that history class and he didn't know the answer. The teacher gave them an essay. He couldn't answer it. And he thought, well, I've got to write something. And he sat there and he wrote out the Declaration of Independence and the statute for religious freedom in Virginia, word for word. And he handed it in. He said, that's all I know about history. You could fail me if you want. Well, they didn't know what to do. They suspended him while they looked into it, but he was sitting right in front of the teacher. They knew that he didn't have the document in front of him. So there's a lot of those sort of cases that came up in the book that both about not only Jefferson, but also about Alexander. So those memories would just come up, but he's a very humble person. He doesn't go around saying, oh, I was Thomas Jefferson, you must listen to me. And I have to tell you that living in Charlottesville, Virginia, as I do, there are many, many Thomas Jeffersons here. And as a matter of fact, one of them was a little upset with me with the book. And he said, you're doing a disservice to humanity by saying T.J. Davis is the only Thomas Jefferson, and then he went off on, this theory about strands of souls going into multiple bodies.
Yeah, I've heard that one too. I was at a conference and there was this supposed reincarnation expert that kept going on with the split soul theory, and he kept wanting to do a whole session with me because obviously I was this, that, and the other thing, and it was like no. Well, look, nobody is an expert on all of this because we're dealing with infinity, but in the thousands of readings I've done, one soul per customer. Okay.
I'm glad you said that, Mark, because that's exactly how I feel. Yeah.
And you know what I love about this is I think part of the humility we're talking about made your journey deeper, richer, more precise, more exploratory. And you really had to work. I mean, it's very different, right, Mark? If
Yes.
somebody walks up to you and you sit down with them and let's say you have a past life experience, it's very different if you're given that insight at so many different levels. I mean, all of us have done research. We know research bias at some level, even if we're objective, whatever that means. But what you had to do to really fill in a blank about what it was like to really spend this time with Cayce. I mean, I was just like, oh man, what would I want to ask him? What would it be like? What would that be like? And Mark, you were talking about, speaking to people that have moved on. But
Yes.
there was an incident in this journey, the passing of Edgar Cayce, that I felt when I was reading about it literally brought him to his knees in a way. I don't have the other language, but
Yes.
such a relationship with someone. And, do you think that changed the trajectory of living for TJ?
I think that did it, but I think that the decisions that his parents made, especially in regard to his education, put him on a whole different trajectory. Mr. Cayce's source was very, very specific. Yeah, he could do these things provided that this happened, and this happened. And his parents totally ignored it.
Wow.
There's a whole chapter called Educational Hodgepodge, and just talks about how Mr. Cayce wanted TJ to go to the high mowing school in New Hampshire, which was a Waldorf school. And because Mr. Cayce had done the reading on the founder, Mrs. Beulah Emmett, on the founder of that school, she had been an assistant to Aristotle, who, guess what, was Alexander's teacher. So they would have had a connection from several thousand years ago. And Mr. Cayce knew that and thought this is the perfect place for him to go. And he was all ready to go. He was like only 6 years old or something, and Gladys was going to take him. And at the very last minute, his mother changed her mind. And that what he said, of everything that's ever happened to him in his life, it was that decision. So now you have to remember, he was only 8.5 years old when Mr. Cayce died. Mr. Cayce had promised him a second life reading when he was 13, but he didn't get that reading. And when Mr. Cayce died, he said things at the ARE really changed very quickly. Everybody was scurrying about and scrambling and trying to save the readings, and nobody had time for him. It should be said, he was born to alcoholic parents who were gamblers.
Yep.
They didn't want a child. And he knew that coming in, and he said, I want to get to Edgar Cayce. How is my soul going to get to Mr. Cayce? I know. He wanted to go through Gladys, but she wasn't married or having children. He said, I know, I'll come through Boyd and Berlin Davis, Gladys's brother and sister-in-law, and they won't want me. And I'll end up with Gladys, and she'll take me to Mr. Cayce. And that's exactly what happened. And so for the first 8.5 years of his life, on and off, he lived with the Cayces. No living recipient of a reading can say that. There's nobody alive who actually knew Mr. Cayce on that basis. And TJ's 84 years old now. You know? And I'm just so thrilled that this book, that he's still on the planet while this book actually got complete. As a matter of fact, on Saturday, he and I are doing our first joint program about this book together in Charlottesville. So we can't wait to do that.
Is it going to be broadcast or videotaped at all?
It'll be on Zoom. And yeah, I'll get a copy of it.
Okay.
And let people know.
And then I want to know, how do people find out more about you? Because we're going to get, when we come back from break, we're going to be taking people on the phone lines and whatever. And I want people to know, how do they get a copy of the book, and how do they find out more about you?
Well, the book is on Amazon, and you can read all about that and all the other books that I've written on my website, which is joannedimaggio.com. And you can also read about the different types of regressions I do. And actually, you could book something online if you were so interested in doing something.
Yeah, I'm right there. Where I am in my life and some of the most bizarre things, I'm thinking to myself, oh, there's no mistake that, guess what? Joanne's on the show, and that this is coming up for me. Mark, we're going to go come to the phones when we come back from break. How do people find out about you, Mark, and some of the things you're up to? I don't know what you can announce, but go at it.
Well, go to my website, evidenceofeternity.com, and I invite people to sign up for my newsletter, because it'll keep you up to date on upcoming episodes of The Psychic and the Doc, my other media appearances. And my new book will be coming out this October. And please go to my website, evidenceofeternity.com, which is just like my last book, Evidence of Eternity. And Joanne, I actually go into reincarnation very deeply in that book as well.
Oh, fascinating. I'll have to get a copy.
Don't scare me now, Mark. Don't be scared.
There's nothing scary about reincarnation. It means we never really die. You know?
Okay, I feel better already. Let's take a short break. When we come back, we got some folks on the phone. Please get your questions ready for Joanne as well. Lots to talk about. Do you think that you're here in this life and have been there in that life as somebody maybe you think we know? Stay tuned. We'll be right back. bobblehead, right? Like this.
Yeah, we are. All
this
right.
is your bobblehead
It's
story.
Bobblehead. Welcome back, everyone. I'm Mark Anthony. You're listening to The Psychic and the Doc, and I'm here with my amazing co-host, street smart spiritualist, behavioral psychologist, Dr. Pat Baccili. And we have a very special guest this week, Joanne DiMaggio, who is a past life regression expert and author of several books, including Edgar Cayce and the Unfulfilled Destiny of Thomas Jefferson. And Dr. Pat, I understand we've got a number of people on the phone lines. So let's go to Jacob. If we could, let's go to Donna from New York.
Yeah, I hope they really put Joanne to the test.
Donna, you're on with the Psychic and the Doc. Hey, Diane.
Jacob, do
Donna.
we have Donna?
Yes.
Donna,
Donna.
welcome to the show.
Thank
Donna.
you very much.
Hey, how can we help you?
I'd like to know if you can connect with my husband, Mark.
Okay, Jacob, can you boost her volume a bit? I can barely hear. I believe.
Me either.
All right, Donna, try again.
Is that better?
Yes, go for
that's
it.
better.
Is that better?
Oh,
Yeah.
Yes. Okay,
Okay.
Donna. All right, hold on. Let me open up the frequency here. I am getting a male energy coming through. Now, sometimes the person that you want to hear from is not always the first one to come through. So let me describe who I'm getting. Now, this male energy, wow, I'm getting a tremendous amount of pain in my throat and in my back, mid to low back. And it's really weird sensation. It's like, I feel like I swallowed glass. I'm not saying that he swallowed glass, but what that means is pain, discomfort, tremendous problems in the esophagus, the larynx. I'm feeling a lot of problems in the upper lungs, the capillaries going into his lungs and heart. And then in my mid to low back, a tremendous amount of pain, and I feel nausea and vomiting. Now, nausea and vomiting are indicators that he may have been having difficulty eating and or holding down food prior to passing, but that is also a cancer indicator. Doesn't always mean cancer, but could be. Does any of this make sense to you, Donna?
The esophagus and the back. I'm not sure about problems holding down food.
Well, you got to realize the esophagus is all part of the digestive system, and that just may have been, no, it could have been, maybe he didn't want to eat towards the end or is having difficulty eating. But anyway, let's go with that. All right, hold on. And he is projecting to me a beautiful piece of jewelry, and it looks like a ring with an opal in it. Now, let me explain what I mean by that. Normally, Donna, when I do a reading, I do a 15-minute or so pre-explanation to explain how to connect all the dots with this. But this could indicate a significant piece of jewelry connected to you or him with an opal in it. But opals are also the birthstone for the month of October, which could indicate a significant birth, death, anniversary, or event connected to you or him or someone close to the two of you within October.
Yes.
That makes sense.
Yes.
In what way?
Yes, it does.
In what way?
Okay. That was my grandmother's birthday, and she had an opal ring that was supposed to pass to me and did not.
There you go. So by him presenting it to me, to you metaphorically, that means he's also there with your grandmother, because spirits always show up in groups. All right, let's see what he's got to say to you. Well, he said a lot. He said the thing about us is we never were at a lack for things to say to each other. We used to converse a lot. Our conversations used to flow like the wind. He said one of the great joys of being with you is just the fact that we could talk, and it was always so easy to talk to you. And he said that let her know that her hair always smelled so good. I don't make this stuff up. That's what he's telling me. So does any of that make sense?
Yes, it does. It does. It does.
Okay.
Yes.
He knows how you feel that the door in life has just shut on you completely. He said, but my girl is very strong, very resolute, and she is prying that door back open. So he is very impressed with, even though you've been knocked to the floor, you have gotten back up. Dr. Pat, do you have anything you would like to add?
Donna, I just only want to ask you a little bit. How does your heart feel about the opal ring?
Well, I was very, very close with my grandmother.
Yeah.
More so than my mother.
Yep.
And my mother kind of took all of the jewelry. And I did receive one. I received a medal that my grandmother wore all the time, but that was it.
Yeah.
But the ring, she had told me she wanted me to have, and it was her birthstone. She was born in October. She passed in October. I don't feel, I'm just happy to have the medal.
Yeah.
I did at least get that.
Yeah.
The material things don't really mean that much to me, but I'm glad that I have something that she wore all the time.
The reason I'm asking you that question is I don't know how much you know about opal. And I think, Joanne, from your perspective, when you think back of what people in different points in time in history wore, right? At one point, opal was very revered and, it was energetically brilliant. And the only reason I ask you that question was less about the piece of jewelry. And this is what I want to say to you about it. I am thrilled for you that you have something. I'm thrilled that you recognize that. And I think more than I want her to have the opal ring, I would investigate from your perspective the healing energy of opal. Do you know what I mean, Donna?
Yes, I do.
Yeah.
Yes.
Joanne, anything you want to chime in on here?
No, actually, this isn't my area of expertise.
Real quick, Donna, does the name, I know we all know somebody named Christopher, but the whole time that you've been on the phone.
That's my son. That's my son. That's my oldest son.
Okay, and he's here in our world, correct?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes, he's
okay. The whole time I'm hearing Christopher, he goes, hug him, love him, love him for me.
Oh my goodness. Can I ask you one question?
Absolutely.
He passed in the house, and I tried to give him. I tried to.
It's all right. Take a deep breath. Relax. Go ahead. Take your time.
I tried to do CPR. I had a hard time getting him off of the chair from the kitchen onto the floor, and I called 911, and I started CPR immediately, but I feel like I was too late. I feel like it was my fault.
Nope.
I wasn't there quickly enough.
All right, hold on, Donna. Actually, he's glad that you brought that up because this is something which has been plaguing you. And I'm going to turn this over to Dr. Pat in a second. But he wants you to know that this was his time. And no matter what, nothing was going to change it. And he said that even though, or as he's telling me, even though he knows how painful it was for you to feel the futility of not being able to get him to breathe again, he also said that if you had not been there, if you had not shared his passing, that you would never have forgiven yourself. But this way, you were there when he transitioned.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you so much.
God bless you.
And let me just leave you with this one thing. Opal is known.
Yes, Dr. Pat.
Opal is known, and I really want you to take this in. I want you to take this in with every breath you take from this point on. Opal is known as the queen of gems. So it's not a mistake what that message is, at least my interpretation of that message from Grandma to you. Queen of gems.
Thank you.
That's you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Donna. Thank you.
Bless
Thank
you,
you so much, everyone.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Wow. So, Joanne, this is a little bit about what the psychic and the doc is about, but I have so many questions as I listen to Mark, and we have the best audience on the planet. And I think about your work, and I often think about a person's life, and just like we just heard, right? And I often wonder about things and how things line up in this life. And, for Donna, Mark, you couldn't have delivered a better message, not her fault, not her fault. And I've often thought about this because let's talk about this from past life if we could. My sister agonized until her death over the death of my mom, who lit herself on fire after her failed first attempt to kill herself. And I didn't know anything. And I often wonder about which lives we bring forward and how we make my language sense, how we can learn more, that would help us in this lifetime. And you hear such a beautiful love story and heart gut-wrenching story like Donna. And after reading your book, and Mark, as we just talked about, I'm just wondering from your perspective, how much you've heard and how much has been revealed to people through your work.
You're talking to me?
Yeah.
It is it's the most humbling experience I've ever had to work with people like this. When they have an aha moment and they understand, they go from asking why, to, oh, I see, I understand. And that changes their perspective. And that in and of itself is a healing. I like to work with people who will, go to the past life that's most impacting them now, because I tell people you've had many, many, many past lives. You're not working on all of them because you would go out of your mind, but you're working on one in particular. And before you were born into this life, when you were in the planning stages of this life, you're working with the Council of Elders and figuring out, how do I want to set this next life up? Who do I want as my parents? What issue am I going to be working on? Who are members of my soul family are going to come in and help me? What's my mission going to be in life? That's like one of the first questions people ask me in a regression. I don't know why I'm here. Help me figure that out. So I think that when they actually look and see that it has been planned, that they've actually set it in motion to help them deal with certain issues that have come up karmically from the previous life. So they've got karmic issues, they've got karmic attributes. And we look at all of that, and suddenly it's like, it's like a mosaic. You've got a piece here, piece here, piece here, piece there, and it all comes together to show you this beautiful, beautiful picture of life. And I really think that it's tremendously helpful and healing. It's the most transformative tool, because you usually only need one session. It's not like regular psychotherapy where you have to go back and back and back, because past life goes right to the heart of the matter. It goes directly to the origin of the problem that you're dealing with. And many times we could heal it right then and there.
I wanted to really bring that in because in this short hour that we spend together, it's so important for people to really understand the depth and the breadth, just like you heard Mark and what he just did. I was stunned when I realized the power of really going and having a session and realizing that you do stop asking why. I didn't really think about it till you said it. But somehow you don't ask why anymore. I'm not going to tell you what you did, what comes up for me that I ask now, but that's why I'm going to go see you. I think we have time, Mark, maybe for one more caller. What do you want to do?
Sure,
all right.
if we can.
Good. Who do we want to go to? Greg?
Yeah, let's go to Greg.
Okay,
Sounds great.
good.
We're going to bring on Greg from Minnesota. Hey,
Hi, Greg.
Hello, this is Greg.
Hey, Greg.
How can we help you today?
Mark, I called in 5 weeks ago, and you gave me a beautiful reading about my wife when she passed. that I was holding her hand. Can you hear me,
Okay.
Mark?
Yes, I can. I'm sorry. I'm so intently listening. Go ahead, Greg.
And anyway, you gave me a beautiful reading, and one of the things you said is, or I mentioned to you, is that she was going to miss her grandchildren, and I cry too easy. Anyway, this was our second marriage. She had three kids, and her 3 kids had 12 grandchildren, and her kids do not speak to me anymore. So I don't know how I can see those grandchildren and keep up with them, as my my past life requested through you.
Actually, I think that's a Dr. Pat question.
I think it's a Joanne question because, and I think it's all of us here, because I think you talked about past life. And that is a scenario that you just described, Greg, where there isn't a single bit of anything that I've studied in any book that I've read in any moment of my life to give you a rational explanation about.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying? It is exactly what Joanne was just talking about, is when here we are in this life and something like that happens. And first we do the why. But Joanne, I can't help but think something like that, a scenario like that, has got to be connected to a past life.
That sounds very karmic to me, that something happened between Greg and either those children as a whole, or something where they would have.
My past life was narcissistic, and she had her, at the end, she had her daughter just way on her side. I was a bad person, being our second marriage and all that. So anyway,
hey,
but
Greg,
that was interesting what you said, Greg. Let me comment on that for a minute, because I don't want to blow by that. What you talked about, and I would need Joanne, but when I've talked with people like Joanne that are experts in this field, rarely do I hear somebody say, you're in this life to be punished for something you did. And that's the way you just sounded right there. There's nothing that I could even relate to in anything that I sense that there is a punitive assessment for things. And I think you're taking that on. I just heard you say it and I just felt it. It just hit me in the heart. So clearly there's some work I got to do. But Joanne, I don't know if you heard him say it, but
I did.
Okay.
Yeah. And karma is not good or bad. It's just cause and effect.
Yeah.
Right. So it's just the universe's way of balancing things. So, it would be really interesting to find out what's the dynamic between these souls, because we travel together as a group, as a soul group, like a pod. And lifetime after lifetime after lifetime, we change gender, we change roles, but it's the same souls over and over again, trying to work stuff out. So it would be interesting to find out what the dynamic is between him and his wife's children. And my heart goes out to him, because I have grandchildren and I would be devastated if I wouldn't be able to see them. So I can understand.
Hold on. I'm sorry. I don't mean to interrupt. Hey, Greg, I'm getting a message. What's going on with you and corned beef? Are you eating a lot of corned beef?
No, I don't.
What's with you and corned beef? Love it or hate it?
I probably hate it.
Okay. All right. When I get dislikes are just as important as likes. Hold on. But your wife is saying that you're not eating really very good lately.
I'm trying to. I do.
Yeah, all right. See, there's a pause there. You got 3 Italians over here, and we know guilt when we hear it. All right.
Yeah, the minute that you said that coming out of your mouth, all I could see was a giant bag of potato chips. Maybe I'm projecting there, Greg.
You got a psychic who's a lawyer. You got a psychologist and a past life regression therapist. Greg, you can't pull anything over on us. But the point is,
are you reaching for the chips, Greg?
Well, I usually have some chips or some Cheetos for my lunch when I'm traveling every day.
All right,
Yeah.
Dr. Pat is a junk food remote viewer.
Oh, please. I'm telling you, I'm all over it. I'm
but-
all over it.
The message from your wife is that the kids are going to seek you out. And, and this is just what I would do. Go ahead and send them cards, send them notes. Go ahead and do that. And if they return, if they're returned or not open, that's not on you. But the kids are going to seek you out, and she wants you to know that. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So I didn't mean to interject, but
Yeah. I want to
say.
say one thing, Greg, because we're running out of time here. I want you to just go to Joanne's site. I want you to really go over there. Joanne DiMaggio.com.
Okay.
Joanne, Joanne. Because this really does sound exactly like Joanne talked about.
Yep.
And I remember this from the last time you called in. And I really do believe that there's no mistake. Joanne's on the show today and you're here. And please reach out to Joanne. Please go to her contact page. You'll see the services. And she just said like a half hour ago that she is now doing things remotely. And so I would encourage you to see if that might be a pathway, to lessen your burden. So I can
actually talk to her like we're talking now?
Yeah, Joanne, do you talk?
I can talk.
Yeah, just like now. She does Zoom. I think you can even Zoom, right?
Yeah, right. That's how I do all my sessions on Zoom.
Please, I don't think there's a mistake.
Yeah.
Thank you, Greg. Thank
Good
you.
luck, Greg.
I'll tell you, you hit me in the heart the same way you did the first time you called in, just saying. And you know what? I think it's okay. A little small Cheeto bag or something there at lunchtime. It's okay. Just don't do what I do and get the large size and don't stop eating them till you're done. What a great show.
We do. And you know what? Next week, Dr. Pat, I'm wearing a Hawaiian shirt for the show because we have Grammy Award winner Jim Kimo West, one of the premier Hawaiian slack guitar musicians in the world, as our guest for Earth Day. So for all of our Hawaiian brothers and sisters out there, aloha and mahalo. We'll see you next week. Joanne, thank you so much. I'm honored as always to be on with Dr. Pat, and everybody tune in to The Psychic and the Doc every Thursday, 7 p.m. Eastern, 4 p.m. Pacific. Namaste. Have a great day. Aloha.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Joanne. We'll see you next week. Hey, everybody. Thank you for tuning in to The Psychic and the Doc with Mark Anthony and me, Dr. Pat Baccili, right here on transformationtalkradio.com. Hey, look, come back next week so we can explore with you more of life's many challenges and learn from fascinating guests. And you know what? Even Mark and me. We'll connect you and discover insights from people in this life and from the afterlife. Extraordinary problems? Yeah, they do. They require extraordinary solutions. But step into the world of possibilities with us on The Psychic and the Doc. That's every Thursday, 4 p.m. Pacific time, 7 p.m. Eastern time, right here on transformationtalkradio.com. That's transformationtalkradio.com. And don't forget, we're also live face-to-face on facebook.com, Transformation Talk Radio.